Hi students, welcome to HSC Biology and Module 7, Infectious Disease. This is video number 16 and we're going to review what we already know about hygiene. Now this is one of a series of strategies that we're going to look at in just a little bit of detail to prevent the spread of infectious disease. So what we'll do is quickly cover some of the points that we've previously talked about around good hygiene and maybe see if we can extend them a little. So hopefully you can recall what you already know about hygienic practices. You should be able to link good hygiene and the reduced incidence of infectious disease and maybe evaluate the importance of good hygiene, particularly where maybe circumstances might change. So we've previously looked at the issue of good hygiene, and we've also looked at the fact that hygienic practices have been around for a very long time. Both Chinese and Jewish culture are full of the importance of practices associated with cleanliness. Despite the fact that we've had this history of understanding, there's still a very large population in the world that don't have access to sufficiently high enough hygiene to protect some of those very basic communicable or infectious diseases. So important issues such as clean drinking water, the use of soaps and detergents, proper sanitation, sewage, toilet facilities, all contribute to good health and a reduction in the potential transmission of infectious pathogens. And probably the area we have talked about previously is food handling and food service. All of these areas have very strict requirements on them to try and limit the transmission of pathogens from, customer to customer, but also from anything that may be in the food to customers. And so there are very strict guidelines on organisations that provide food services to ensure that they comply. Non-compliance can not only lead to significant fines and bad publicity, but also to higher incidence of disease and perhaps even more serious consequences for consumers. So that's why a lot of work, has been done in this area of good hygiene for food handling. Some of the important components of the guidelines involve what you would expect, things like washing hands and keeping cuts covered, keeping hair out of food preparation areas, ensuring that all materials that are being used are washed with hot and soapy water. The use of coloured chopping boards is a really important one. It's been picked up not only by commercial enterprises but homes as well in domestic situations where people will use different colours to keep the meat and the vegetables separate from one another. Probably one of the areas that's a bit of a concern is when we are thawing out particular foods that have been in the freezer, making sure that they are either thawed in a fridge or a microwave, not left sitting on a front counter or a kitchen bench, because that can, if you're not careful or if you're not sure how long it's been sitting out there, it can be sitting at room temperature for longer than is recommended. Raw vegetables, washing before preparation. A lot of people get their vegetables from supermarkets where people just pick them up, sniff them and put them back again. Good refrigeration and hot foods being stored at very high temperatures to ensure that they're not just lukewarm and really providing the perfect environment for pathogens to grow. The other area probably that's obvious for us to deal with in terms of good hygiene is surgery and medical practice. And often this is a place where you would expect there to be the highest levels associated with antiseptic procedures, with keeping potential disease transmission to an absolute minimum, and yet there has been cases, particularly famous case a few years ago with increases in the incidence of golden staph being transmitted as a result of hospital visits. So PPE is one of the important things, and obviously the degree of danger associated with a particular pathogen may influence exactly what components of PPE are being used. So PPE is personal protective equipment, gowns, gloves, masks, good hand hygiene, maybe eye shields, maybe full body protection with oxygen packs if the case is needed. It's also important in handling sharps, so needles or scalpels, that have been or potentially could be in contact with human flesh, and therefore can transmit the pathogens associated with blood products, for example. Surgery and medical practices are also very quick to respond if there is a suspicion of outbreaks or the presence of a particular pathogen in an organisation, in terms of their rapid response, the isolation, testing of any individuals who've potentially been exposed, and monitoring of visitors. Regular environmental cleaning and biohazard disposal, another very important one, where material has been in contact or where biopsies, for example, have been carried out, and certain human material, human tissues may be still around. The safe disposal of them is a very important part of the process. Now, whilst we have the best intentions with our hygiene, sometimes certain circumstances can affect the way our hygiene looks. So one of the things that you can look at, and we will look at in future videos, and certainly in class, is case studies where we've seen natural disasters, Hurricane Katrina or Matthew, have devastated particular areas, and as a part of that devastation, they may have damaged things like the sewerage lines or the sanitation processes, which can mean that a lot of areas which were previously clean and safe can become contaminated, and so certain diseases can certainly increase in incidence after a natural disaster. The cholera outbreak associated with Hurricane Matthew in Haiti was one example of where a society prior to a natural disaster had good practices, but as a result of exposure to the elements, in this case a hurricane, the devastation that was caused after that wasn't just associated with the damage caused by the hurricane, but in the subsequent increase in infectious disease as a result of that. So we'll have a look at a couple of examples of case studies of that in class. Thanks for watching.